Hey everyone, Star Wars Gazer here with another awesome interview that I want to show you guys. But before I do, I had a couple things I wanted to say. First of all, I appreciate every single one of you who have subscribed to me thus far. I really appreciate the love and support. If you haven't subscribed yet, please make sure to hit that subscribe button. Also, hit the notification bell so you can be notified when more awesome interviews drop, just like this one you're about to watch. The other thing I wanted to let you guys know is I do have a merch store. It is online, it is up, it is in my bio on my YouTube. There's also a link tree right there. So you guys can hit that, use your phone, pull out your camera, click on it. It'll take you to everything that I'm associated with, including but not limited to Rebel Scum Art and Apparel. If you guys haven't yet, go subscribe to them. $20 a month gets you a t-shirt every month plus free shipping on anything. And if you use code Star Wars Gazer, you get 15% off your entire order. So thank you guys for watching. I really appreciate it. And stay tuned for more videos just like this. Have a good one, guys. Enjoy, and may the Force be with you always.
Now this is podgazing.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Podgazer podcast. I'm your host, Star Wars Gazer, and I am joined by the one, the only Mr. Marc Thompson. Thank you so much for joining. It's a pleasure to have you. You are, for me, I listen to a lot of Audible Star Wars, and so for me, you're the iconic voice of Star Wars for me. So
Oh, wow. Thank you.
yes, absolutely. So let's just start off. It's a couple of quick questions I like to do to kind of get things kicked off. What got you into Star Wars? Was it something that's always been around your household, or what got you there?
Yeah, I'm one of those. I'm a part of the generation. I was born in '75, so
Okay,
like some of my first memories are the action figures and watching the movies on the VHS tapes and stuff. So it just feels like it's always been there for me, and it's just kind of weaved into who I am. So
that's awesome.
yeah.
That's awesome. That's cool. So if you're born in '75, then you were what, 8 when Return of the Jedi came out? Then
Yeah. That's crazy.
wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's crazy because I was 10 when Revenge of the Sith came out. So,
Wow. Okay.
yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. So that's really cool. And I got to share it with my daughter this year.
Oh,
She's
that's
turning
great.
yeah, she's turning 10 at the end of this year, and we were able to go watch Revenge of the Sith since it's out. And I was like, this is cool to share that with her.
Yeah.
So,
My youngest son was born, the day that, Revenge of the Sith came out. And,
wow.
like, I promised my wife I would be there for the birth, but, like, he came at, like I think the premiere was it was on the 18th, and he was born at, like, yeah, I forget what time in the morning, like, somewhere around midnight or something. So, I got a little sleep. She was gonna sleep all day the next day anyway. People give me flack for that, but 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 I went into the theater, and then, like, right before the movie started, I told my buddy that, David had just been born, and he's like, "Really? That's crazy." So he got up and, like, shouted, "Hey, this guy just had his wife just had a baby," and the whole theater was like, "Ah!" It was such a cool moment.
That is
That was
awesome.
hilarious watching Anakin and Obi-Wan, fight, so it was pretty awesome.
Yes. Yeah, and it was really cool to share that with my daughter in theaters, man. Like, I was like, "So
Yeah.
what'd you guys think afterwards?" They're like, "It is so better in a
Oh,
big
yeah.
screen." I'm like, "100% it is," you know?
Yeah.
So,
I was
uh,
working this weekend, so I was disappointed I didn't get out to see it, but,
no,
yeah.
it did really well,
Did
man.
really well.
Crazy. My
Yeah,
friend called that. He goes, "Dude, I bet box office it blows things out of the water that, just money-wise." And I'm like,
it's
"You're
crazy.
probably right."
Yeah.
Yeah. So, what would you say for you is your favorite Star Wars movie?
For me, it's Empire. Like, I Yoda is my all-time favorite Star Wars character, and that movie just it opened up what the Force was and kind of all of that stuff on Dagobah. I just
Yeah.
that is like, sustenance to me. Like, I'm just like, "Oh my gosh, like, give me more of that." Like, and so I just, that solidified my love and, appreciation of Star Wars, that movie. So,
Absolutely. That is my favorite as well. I am a massive Empire fan. And for me and my friends, it usually goes back and forth between Revenge of the Sith and Empire.
yeah.
So, but Empire for me, I'm a big Boba Fett fan, and
Okay,
like
cool.
his roles in there are just, oh, it's so cool.
So
So,
amazing how much of an imprint he made on people just from those few scenes.
yeah. And he had like what, 2 or 3 lines in the entire movie?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
you know, and everyone's like, Boba, and I love it. I love it. I wanna know what Darth Vader meant, "No disintegrations," you
Yes,
know?
yeah,
I want a story on that.
yeah, yeah.
Oh, man. What would you say we'll kind of split this up because this one's a little more difficult. Favorite Star Wars TV show? We'll start with live action and then animation.
Oh, man. I've been wavering lately because like, it's pretty much a tie between Mandalorian and Ahsoka. Like,
Yeah.
I'm so like, they depending on which one's airing maybe, but,
Yep.
like, Ahsoka might be eking out a little bit more favorite right now, which goes to my part 2 because my animation, believe it or not, is Rebels. Like, I love Clone Wars and all that,
That's cool.
but Rebels is my all-time favorite, so there's a little bit more invested for me in Ahsoka because of all the history of all those characters and everything like
Yeah.
that. But Mandalorian was, like, such a pleasant surprise, and Grogu is, like, blowing me away, and the kind of culture of the Mandalorians being explored, or this at least this particular group of Mandalorians, and, like,
Yeah.
so they're really pretty even, I would say, for those 2, so.
That's cool. And Ahsoka, let's be honest, Ahsoka is kinda like Rebel season 5, right? I mean,
Yeah,
it
yeah,
really is.
totally, yeah.
Yeah. What was your reaction, especially as someone who grew up with the original trilogy when Luke Skywalker showed up at the end of season 2?
I was freaking out, like, it was great. I feel like I got maybe, uh, a small spoiler. 'Cause I think I saw, like my algorithms kind of ruin it for me because, like, I love this stuff so much that I subscribe to, like, every page. So, like, and I can't I'll forget, like, the day of an episode premiering, like, "Oh, I shouldn't be looking on social media at all." And I think I saw something that made me think, "Huh, I wonder," but I kind of went really quick past it or didn't read it too depth. But then as soon as, like, the X-Wing came in, I kinda knew, and I was like, "Oh my gosh." And then it was just so brilliantly shot because, like, it was like you get a little bit more like, first it's the X-Wing, then it's just, like, a black hood, and you're like, "Wait," and then it's, like, a black hand, and you were like, "Whoa," and then the green
Yeah.
lightsaber is like, "Ah," so it's like, it just kept, like, hint, 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 it
Yes.
is."
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
so
I
it was pretty epic, it was amazing to
it
see him, in his peak Jedi powers was wish fulfillment and amazing and awesome.
Oh, dude, it was so cool. You should My wife was, like, all worried because 'cause I'm down here watching it on the big screen, and I did the same thing you did. As soon as I saw the X-Wing, I was like, "No way, are you kidding me?" And I'm, like,
Mhm.
jumping up and down and giddy as a schoolgirl, and she's like, "What's wrong? What's wrong?" I'm like, "They brought Luke Skywalker
Yeah.
back,"
It was so great.
It was so good. I loved it, and the way, like, there was a couple things in there, like, they had some callbacks to even Anakin, there's the quick behind the back, like,
Oh,
block.
yeah.
And I was like, "Oh, sweet callback." Like,
Mhm.
that was it was epic. It was so good. So like I said at the beginning, you for me are like iconic Star Wars voice. Um, I love you. You're the voice of Thrawn, you're the voice of Pelion. Like, I just got done re-listening to all 3 of those books for like the 3rd time in a row.
Oh, wow.
I love those books. What for you has been maybe one of your favorite Star Wars characters to try and narrate?
Oh, man. That's an interesting question. I mean, I feel like my standard answer is always Yoda, but what's popping into my mind right now is, like, Admiral Akbar. Like, I feel like it's been kind of fun because, like, where the books have an interesting advantage is that you can spend a lot more time with situations and characters than you would in the films. Because like, the
Yeah.
films, are maybe 2.5 hours, but the books are sometimes, like, 12, 15 hours. So,
Yeah.
you get to, like, go a lot deeper into what everybody's thinking and just also these characters. So, like, Akbar can sometimes have a lot more to do in these books, and it's interesting to kind of see him, say more than "It's a trap," but, like, really kind of, like, strategize and I don't know if you saw the Celebration announcement, but, like, I'm
Yeah.
pretty pumped about him coming back in Ahsoka,
Yes.
so yeah,
Yeah.
I'll guess I'll go with Akbar. Like, I like kind of, making him have actual in-depth conversations with people is kinda interesting, so
That's awesome. One
yeah.
of the things that's been fun for me is I have a buddy, his name's Jar Jar Jargon, and he
Oh, neat.
has been working on Star Wars Heir to the Empire anime, and it's like a nonprofit, anything like
Oh,
that.
I saw that, yeah.
Yeah. Um I actually voiced Captain Pelion in it.
No way, that's
Yeah. And
cool.
so I sat there for a while listening to you voice him on Audible. I'm like,
Oh,
okay, I'm
cool.
gonna try and get as close as I can to Mark on this. So it was a lot of fun.
Oh, that's
So I love it.
awesome.
Yeah. Um, I love obviously you're the voice of Thrawn, man. Like don't get me wrong, I can't remember his name that does
Lars
Thrawn like
Mickelson.
Lars, yes,
Yeah,
thank you. He's a fantastic live action Mars,
yeah.
but your voice of Thrawn is just it's
Oh,
ever present.
oh, thank you, I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. What would you feel is your most challenging character that you've had to try and voice?
I don't know, like, I feel like the older I get, the more challenging it is to do some of the creatures, like, there's,
Yeah.
like, the Nogri, like, very scratchy and, like, kind of, like, very down and doing that long term can be
Right.
hazardous to your voice.
Yeah. You need lots of water,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, hence this giant canteen, yeah.
You just have like a 24 pack of water in there while you're
Mhm.
recording that you're just constantly just
Oh, yeah, tons of water breaks and bathroom breaks.
Yeah, absolutely. You also did the Revan book.
Oh,
Um
yeah.
how was that like as a process as a whole?
That was really great. I mean, that was earlier on in some of the books I've done, and I don't think I really understood or appreciated how much people like Revan or like, you
Mhm.
know.
Yeah.
So I Uh, I feel like if I knew how revered he was, I might have, felt a little more pressure. Like, I always feel pressure when I'm doing a Star Wars book just because I want them to be as good as possible.
For sure.
So maybe I'm grateful that I didn't know, like, how much people loved him because I just,
Yeah.
that would have been, like, even more scary and even more daunting to try to tackle. So I went in a little bit blind on that and, but I really love that book, and I know a lot of people do also, so it's really
Yeah.
cool.
So was that your first Star Wars book or what was your first Star Wars book?
So my first was, Legacy of the Force, and it was
Okay.
a 9-book series, and it was kind of, picking up where Luke and Leia's, kids are adults.
Okay.
So it was like Jason and Jaina and, I guess was it Anakin? Is that right?
Yeah.
And then Ben Solo and, or not, sorry, not Ben Solo, Ben Skywalker,
Yeah.
right?
Is
Yeah,
Ben
yeah,
Skywalker.
yeah,
Yep.
sorry. So yeah, so it was kind of that, and then, I think Abeloth was that she was there or either part of Fate of the Jedi, but Legacy of the Four or Legacy of the Jedi. Wait, what did I say? Legacy of the
Y
Force, sorry.
yeah.
Was the first kind of book I got and the first series I got. And they
That's
were
cool.
looking for someone to kind of, do that series of books. And I'd never really done an audiobook before. And
That's cool.
I kind of it was really kind of getting thrown into the deep end there in terms of how audiobooks work and doing that. And so I had to do a lot of on the job training.
Yes.
So, but it was really fun, and I'm grateful for that, and I believe that was, like, 2006, so,
Okay. Dang.
coming up on 20 years soon, so
That's cool. That's cool. So, like, obviously, you do more than Star Wars. You do a lot of different voices and stuff. So, like, take us through the journey of you going into voice acting, kind of some of the voices that you've done, and then like how you ended up getting into Star Wars? Like, what was that first interaction like getting that first book and all that?
Yeah, yeah. So I went to school for acting. Like I went to NYU to study acting, and I thought, maybe I would do theater or maybe film or television or something like that. Um, so I wasn't thinking of specializing in voiceover, but my sophomore year, this was like pre-internet, so like I'm very very old, and they had like a cork board that just had like a flyer on it, and it said, "Would you like to audition for this cartoon?" And just call this phone number. So I call up the phone number and it's an answering machine, and they're like, leave a character voice on the answering machine and we'll call you back. So I was like, what? So this particular cartoon was like about vampires or something like that. So I think I left like an Igor sounding voice. I was like, hello, I'd like to be in your cartoon. And that was enough to kind of get me a call back. So then I went into the studios and it was with MTV, and that cartoon didn't end up getting produced, but this other show they were casting had me audition for that, and that was called Daria, and it was a spinoff of this show called Beavis and Butthead.
Yeah,
Um, and so I ended up getting cast as Kevin Thompson, which is hilarious because Kevin Thompson is the name of the director of the Star Wars audiobooks.
that's awesome.
And I got cast as Mr. DiMartino and Mr. O'Neill. And that was my first ever job. And it was on MTV, and that was for 5 or 6 years, and it was awesome. And I did a little bit of like Celebrity Deathmatch. And then I kind of was doing that. And then a little bit down the road, I answered an ad in Backstage for a show called Pokemon. So,
Heck yeah.
I started working on Pokemon, and I've been doing that for 20 some odd years because 'cause I'm still working on that was what I was doing right before I came to this interview, as I
Oh,
was doing a
sweet.
Pokemon session, yeah.
Heck
So
yeah.
yeah, yeah, so that's pretty cool. And I've over the years, I've done, like, Gengar and, like, Cubone and, Tepig and, a bunch like, probably 50 or 60 different creatures, and then, like, I was this guy called, Professor Samson Oak and, Professor, Don George and a bunch of different people on that show, and then that was, when it started, it was at this company called 4 Kids Entertainment,
Okay.
and they were kind of trying to, reinvigorate Saturday morning cartoons, and they kind
Yeah.
of bought a syndication block on Fox and the CW, and it was like a cartoon factory. Like we did Pokemon, we did Yu-Gi-Oh, and I was like Duke Devlin on Yu-Gi-Oh, and then they did a bunch of Yu-Gi-Oh spinoffs, and I was characters on all those shows, and I
Dang.
was like, and they did like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I was Casey Jones, Gongola, Bash
Yeah.
Purple Dragons, like
I
so
love it.
that was fun, and, so we did that for a while, and that show was really, really cool. And we did, probably a dozen different shows at 4 Kids Entertainment, and they kind of, once you finished in one session, they're like, "Okay, now go to the next booth and do the villain of the week on that one," and so well, we
That's
just
funny.
all kinda did a bunch of stuff, and so I did a lot of animation, predominantly. Um, and then somewhere in there Eric Stewart, who's a director and actor at 4 Kids Entertainment, he helped me get a demo together, and I got a demo together, and then a different friend ended up, saying, "Hey, do you have an agent?" And I was like, "No," and they're like, "Oh, you should call so and so," and they helped me get an agent, and then, I started doing commercial work here and there, and then, eventually, my agent called and said, "Have you ever done an audiobook?" And, I tell this story all the time, but I was the kid in high school who, if he had to do a book report, I would rent the movie because I just, I was like, "Oh, I don't want to read," so
Same.
I was kind of used to like cartoons where you just go in and do a line or two, or, and so I was like, no, not really. I'm not sure if it's my thing. And they were like, well, it was a Star Wars book. I thought you might be interested. I was like, whoa, 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 hold on, wait. Um, so so then I auditioned for that, and the audition was for Legacy of the Force, and they gave me a couple pages to kind of come in and read, and I like really worked hard on that audition. Like I, studied it forward and backwards. I was watching clips from the movies. I was praying. I was like,
Right.
please let me get this, And so that's where I met, Kevin Thompson, and I auditioned for him, and I think I got the job because I could do some approximations of some of the voices from the movies, you know, so,
Yeah.
but again, like, narrating is like a whole new can of worms, you know, like, it's totally 'cause, like, you know, we started doing the books, and, I remember one day, like, Kevin said to me, "Okay, the dialogue is super engaging and super interesting, but anytime you get to the prose, like, just kind of the narration, it's very flat, and you gotta find a way to make the narration as interesting as you are making the dialogue."
Mhm.
And so he really had to kind of talk me through that and help me find a way into that, I'm so grateful he did because now I would say audiobooks have become one of my favorite things because it's like, you know, I went in kind of dreading it and like, I'm not sure I want to do that. And now it's like, I'm like, oh, this is why people like reading. Like,
Yes.
you know, it's like, because
Yeah.
there's so much more depth to the stories and like detail and like hearing what people's inner monologues are and
Yeah.
really being able to unravel the plot in a much deeper way than you could on a half hour or 2 hour program. And so
Yeah.
I've really come to love it, but I was kind of reluctantly pulled into it.
I
So
love that. I
yeah.
love that. Yeah, and I appreciate all the work you guys do for Audible because I'm like you, I've never been a reader. Like
Mm.
I told my wife semi-jokingly, but kind of seriously, like, why read a book when in 6 months there's going to be a movie about it and I can listen to
Yeah.
the fans complain about whether it was good or not.
Right.
Um, and so for me, these Audible books are great because not only do you get that raw emotion that the reader is given into it, but then they add sound effects and some music and
Yeah.
stuff, and it's
Yeah.
almost like you're listening to a movie. I mean, it is,
Yeah,
and it's
and
really cool.
those like, not every book gets that treatment. So,
Right.
like, the Star Wars ones are some of the few that do, and, it really is immersive, like, when they do that, and that's all Kevin Thompson and Paul Goodrich and, Nick Martorelli and, like, all those guys, like, really they do magic on that stuff. Like, they really make it so yeah, so much a experience. It's like a
Yeah,
radio play, you know, so it's really well done.
it is. It's really cool, and we appreciate all the hard work you guys do for that. So, have you gotten to meet of all the characters that you voiced, have you gotten to meet any of the actors who actually played him in movies?
So, last year, I got to meet Lars Mikkelsen.
Oh, sweet.
It was so amazing, like, because I was doing a convention, called Voices Against Cancer, which is a great convention, and everyone should check that out. It's like a fundraiser for a children's hospital, and
Sweet.
so but they got me, Timothy Zahn, and Lars
Ooh,
Mikkelsen,
dang.
and we all 3 of us were meeting for the first time, like, Tim had never met Lars, and, I had met Tim before, but I got to witness Tim and Lars, like, meet for the very first time, and I was like, you know?
That's so cool. Oh,
And,
man.
and it was so wild because, like, you know, uh, he's such a great actor, um, but I guess I imagined that his natural personality would be closer to what Thrawn's is, you know, maybe a
Yeah,
little serious and you know, maybe a little, you know, kind of quiet or whatever, and, you know, we were kinda taking pictures with some of the kids in the hospital, and I had a Pokemon shirt on because I thought that's what the kids would be more into. So, he came in, and all of a sudden, this guy was like, "Hey, why don't you get a picture with this kid, with the 2, Mark and Lars?" And it's like, "Okay." And the photographer's like, "Oh, kid, you're lucky. You're getting a picture with 2 Thrawns." And all of a sudden, Lars looks at me, and he's like, "Is that you? Are you the man?" I was like, "Yeah, yeah." And he's like, "What?" And he was like so like gregarious and encouraging and like, you know, and he was like chatting with me the whole weekend and just so warm and friendly and so
that's so
opposite of
cool.
the coldness of Thrawn. I was like, man, like I walked away from it, was like, I knew he was a good actor, but he's a really good actor because he's so different from that character. So
That's
uh
so cool.
yeah, it was
Oh,
really
man.
fun.
An out of body experience too, because for him, he recognized you, right? He's like,
Yeah,
"You're the one," you know?
yeah,
Like
'cause I think people had mentioned it to him before or something like that
yeah,
you know, and he told me that he's also done audiobooks, like, in, where is he? The Netherlands, I think, so, like, but he's done that before, and so I was getting to grill him a little bit. So, I was
that's
like
so cool.
yeah, so that was a really special experience. I was really excited about that.
That's awesome. I'm actually, a little bummed because I'm really excited. This year is my first convention. I'm going to ICCC in Nashville.
Oh, that's a great one too,
Yes,
yeah.
and, but I know you and Timothy Zahn were there last year, but you're not
Yes.
going this year, and I was
Yeah,
like,
yeah, yeah.
I was hoping
Oh,
to meet
bummer.
him." So, but maybe one day in the future we can link up. You think you'll
Mhm.
go to the, 50th, 2027 in LA?
Yeah, I mean, unless I'm dead, I'm gonna be there, right? Like,
Right? Same,
or if tickets sell out, because I know that people are gonna be really trampling, to get there for the 50th, so
for sure.
but I already cleared it with my wife. I was like, "Listen, I really wanna be there, like, can I just go?" And he's like, "Yeah, yeah," so
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, yeah.
So for Legacy of the Force, you talked about the characters you were like as close as you can trying to, in a sense, mimic
Mhm.
some of those characters' voices. Is that the same thing you took when you went to the Heir to the Empire, is trying to mimic those voices as best as you could?
Well, so that was interesting. Well, yes, for, like, Luke and Han and, Lando and Leia and all those guys, I was trying to get as close as I could. But for Thrawn himself, when we did Heir to the Empire, that was before I had seen him in any media.
Yeah.
So we kind of came up with a voice that's slightly different than what we're doing now, because originally, it was kind of a straight up baritone, kind of British,
Oh man,
um
that voice gives me chills. I love it.
and we were kind of leaning into the Sherlock Holmes style of character there, and we did that for the 25th anniversary of Heir to the Empire, and then I think, also for the Hand of Thrawn duology, those 2 books we did that with, and then Disney acquired Lucasfilm, and I was kinda like, "Oh, man," I wonder if I'll still get to do this or not. And, uh,
Uh,
and they did still, have me do it, so I was excited. But then especially when they announced that Thrawn was coming to Rebels, I was like, "Oh, I wonder," 'cause like, they probably wanna get somebody new to kinda differentiate from Legends and, now, but I got to do it, and so,
so cool.
so then when I heard Lars, he was doing that very kind of like he has that very interesting accent, and it's very soft spoken and very reserved, so like I
Yes.
tried to I was watching Rebels with my kids, and I was listening to what he was doing, and I was maybe starting to parrot a little bit, and they're like, "What are you doing?" I was like, "Oh, no, nothing, nothing, I'm fine." So I was super grateful I got to do um Thrawn can after he was on Rebels, and then there have been several books with him. There's like 2 trilogies of books, that you get the backstory of Thrawn leading up to Rebels, and then you get kind of even a further backstory of before he kind of came into that galaxy, like what,
Yeah,
when he's in kind of, the Chiss Ascendancy and kind of what leads to him getting, you know, exiled, and so they're
yeah,
really great stories, and, like, Tim Zahn is just amazing at, world building and at, like, these characters that are super smart because every single part of his plan makes sense, and you get to really see
yep,
Thrawn, be the master chess player that he is, and, in both
yeah.
of those books, and, or all sorry, both of those trilogies, so they're really, really excellent,
Yeah. Yeah, Thrawn is amazing. What is it like, are you as you're coming up with these voices and doing these things and putting these things together, are you working with Timothy's on it, or after it's done, are you showing it to him? And what is that process like?
It's more the latter, like, I know
Okay.
different narrators and different authors have different processes. I you know, Lucasfilm is like a big ship, and there's a lot, like, there's always a danger of there being too many cooks in the kitchen, I guess. So,
Right.
um so, um, I learned kinda early on that, if I reached out to the authors, it might interfere with the director's role and the director's choices, and, so, I didn't wanna I learned early on from a mistake I made, to not maybe do that too much and not,
Okay.
muddy the waters or, like, and so, but the truth is that I always feel like the authors give me all the information I really need, in the book itself. Like, there you know, like, there's they might every once in a while, there might be an author that will say, "Hey, I'd love it if this character could have this type of voice."
Yeah.
But most of the time, any of details I would use to try to come up with a voice are in the descriptions of the characters themselves in the text. Like they're, in the way that the author describes how they sound or
Yeah.
how other people are reacting. Um so yeah, it just it would just a lot of times I'm getting the script maybe 3 weeks before we have to go into the booth, which sounds like a lot of time, but it's not because I have to read it all. I have to do all my other jobs and
Dang.
and then I'm trying to come up with character voices for everyone who speaks in the book. So if I were to like stop and for every single person that speaks in the book, go to the author and say, "Hey, what do you think?"
Yeah.
And then wait for them to get back to me. It slows the process down and it would and they're not always aware of how characters because sometimes, especially in Star Wars, you're performing characters that have been written by several authors over several different generations, and, so, like and even though this voice might be perfect for this particular book, that another author is gonna be writing that character, and they have another character that might sound too similar if I did it that way. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of reasons, but,
Yeah.
I basically kind of just me and the director are kind of collaborating on what it should sound like when we're recording it, so.
That's cool. What was the reaction like when you first met Timothy Zahn? After you did the voices and stuff and you first met him, like what was the reaction there?
Well, I was definitely nervous. He was coming in to I think we were recording a commentary track for the 25th anniversary of Heir of the Empire.
Okay.
Um, so obviously I want him to like it.
Right,
So
exactly.
so I definitely nervous and like, and I think he either had listened to it or had listened to clips of it, and he was very complimentary and he really did enjoy it and like it,
That's
um,
cool.
and it is kind of like, um, because I knew, but I didn't know. I feel like over the past 20 years, I've and also getting to read more of his books because I've done I've lost count now, man, how many I've done. I feel like I've done 15 or 20 of his books now. Not just Star Wars too. Like I've gotten to read some of his books called Icarus. There's an Icarus series that's also like a sci-fi series,
That's
and
cool.
so I have a greater appreciation of him as an author, just
Yeah.
as time has gone on, and just also, like, learning more and more about the history of how the you could argue that we might not have a lot of the Star Wars we have now if it weren't for Timothy Zahn, because like,
Right.
after Return of the Jedi, there were some books that came out, but Heir of the Empire kind of reignited that flame of Star
Yeah.
Wars for a lot of people and kind of created an appetite for more books, more comics, more and then eventually films and TV shows. So like
Yeah.
and you could make a case that without Heir of the Empire, a lot of that would not have happened. So
Yeah.
um
100%.
he's incredibly important. And I've gotten to do a few conventions with him, recently and he doesn't he doesn't fully understand how important he is to the
Right.
history of Star Wars. Like
Yeah.
he's uh he's incredibly humble, which is a good thing, but
Yeah.
he needs to get more
And he's so
credit for what he's
knowledgeable.
done. Yeah, and
Yeah.
and just how pivotal Thrawn is becoming now in Ahsoka and in Rebels, and it's just
Yeah.
it's like you wouldn't when you talk with him, you don't it's a good thing that he's that
Yes.
humble, but I feel like he needs more credit, like, he needs more to get
For
more,
sure.
flowers because he's so important to the Star Wars galaxy and universe, so and I just
100%.
want him to know how appreciated and how important he is to everything that has come since.
Yeah.
So
It's fun, man. Like one of my buddies he was at ICCC last year.
Uh-huh.
Is Star Wars Sith 66, Tony.
Mm,
And he said like he'd sit there for 10 minutes, talk to Timothy, leave him alone and then come back and he's still got no he's like, I'm going to talk to him again,
yeah.
like and that dude's just just a wealth of knowledge and ideas.
Yes.
Like
Yes.
so I hope we get more Star Wars books from him. That would be sweet because
Me too.
So as you've been working with him over the years, because obviously you said you're doing this Icarus and stuff, like, is it get easier to narrate his books just because you're so familiar with the way he writes?
That's a great question. Yeah, I would say yes. Like, because at first, if I'm being honest, it was a little challenging because, like, he's so good at the kind of, how complicated the strategy of Thrawn is, or how interconnected all of the threads of the story are. So when you're first reading through it, you're like, "How why is this important?" Or "Why are we spending so much time talking about this little detail?" Or, but
Right.
then when you get to the end, it all comes together and, like, in this
Yeah.
tapestry that, you know and it's weird with like, he's one of the few authors where I get to the end of his stories and I don't know how it's all gonna come together, and then all of a sudden it does.
Yes.
And, like, but it makes sense. It's like and, like, all of those things earlier, all of a sudden, like, the light bulb goes on, it's like, "Oh," but, like so, like, it sometimes I had to get better at seeing the seeds as they're being
Yes.
planted so that I can foreshadow them properly because, you know, things that I'm thinking are insignificant or just a weird quirk or why did they notice that or why are they having this dialogue about that like are really important later on.
Yeah.
But he surprises me every time. It's just learning to kind of, pay more attention, I guess.
Right.
So
Exactly. That's the sign of a good writer, right? You know what
Yeah.
he's doing, but you don't know what he's doing,
Yes,
right? Like,
yes. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, I love that. So, at doing voice acting, which is harder, do you think? Trying to mimic a voice or trying to come up with a new voice for a character?
Mm. It's a tie, I think. I mean, because like, mimicking is hard, especially if it's not something that's in your range or not something that's in your wheelhouse or, like, the types of things you can do. But sometimes it does feel like, "What am I gonna do now?" Like, how am I gonna make this character, different or distinctive or, what can I latch onto? And so sometimes, especially when some of the books will have, you know, 75, 80, 100 different speaking parts. And, obviously some of them are like the 3rd lieutenant on the bridge, So
Right,
but,
right.
you want it to be good. So, yeah. So it's that's a tie, I guess, in my mind. I don't know.
Yeah. What, I do gotta ask you, so in one of the books in the Heir Empire, Leia gets to Kashyyyk, right, with Chewie,
Oh, yeah.
and there's that, oh, what is his name? Oh my word, it just escaped me.
Um,
The one that speaks kind of bad Wookiee, but he's got that
oh,
really
right.
what was that like coming up with that voice, and where did that come from?
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah, sometimes you take big swings, right?
Yeah, yep.
Yeah, I don't know. I think I was trying to kind of, make it a hybrid of, a Wookiee growl and like someone who's talking or whatever. And there's definitely sometimes authors will give you challenges like that because they're like, I don't have to figure out how to sound design that. I just have to write it.
Right, exactly. And you're like, "Thanks a lot." No.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it. Your impression of, I mean, everyone is great, but, like, I think right now of, like, Han and Lando are,
Oh,
like,
cool.
spot on, man.
Oh,
Like,
thanks, dude.
especially I mean, both of them. When I hear your rendition of them, I'm taken back, not joking, to Empire, like, in their
Oh,
voices,
wow.
like,
Yeah.
"Well, what have we here?"
Right.
Like, just
Yeah.
that. Oh, man. It's so cool. Um do you have to spend a lot of time trying when you're trying to mimic those voices, like, a lot of time listening to their lines and stuff, or
Yeah, I mean, yes and no. Like, I definitely do, but I have a bit of an unfair advantage with, Han, Luke, or Leia, or Lando, just because, like, I've watched those films so many times that I have some of their line readings, like, imprinted in my mind, so then
yeah,
I can kinda borrow that phrasing for other lines or kind of, think about, like, this scene feels similar to when they're going into the asteroid field, or this scene feels similar to when they're in Cloud City and, they're kind of giving each other a hard time and kind of teasing each other, like, so that I can kind of use those as reference points to kind of help me lock in. So, but
Yeah.
I'm definitely like rewatching stuff, and that's always I was like, "Oh, I gotta go to work. I gotta watch Empire again." Yeah. So it's always a
Oh, dang.
yeah. Oh man, tough day at the office.
I love it. I love it. You talked about earlier the voices of the Nogri.
Oh yeah.
Like we talked about how hard that is on the voice. Like as I was listening to it, I was like, man, that is like I talk for a little bit like that to my kids just out of fun. And I'm like, dude, my voice is like so like what was it like? Like how'd you come up with that voice? Like, when you think of Nogri people, like
Right.
now you think of that voice, but originally you're like, "Okay, where do I start with this?" Right? Like
Yeah. Yeah, I think so much of it for me is in the author's descriptions, and just like,
yeah.
I think I was drawing on, if I can remember correctly, like just the fact that they're kind of described as being, stealthy and in the shadows, and so I was maybe playing with the idea of kind of a whispery thing, and then the way they're described, sometimes I'll go to like Wikipedia,
Okay.
and like I'll like, especially if it's like one of these legends books, or like where there's a lot of articles on Wikipedia about, I'll look at like, maybe comic illustrations, or different, uh stills from movies of what this species looks like. And a lot of times I'll draw a lot of inspiration from those drawings, and just like, okay, how would that sound based on how it's looking? And so yeah, so there's a lot of different uh things that go in there, but I'm drawing from all of them.
That's cool. That is really cool. I love voice acting, voiceovers, like what you guys do. Like it's so cool. That's why I was really appreciative of the opportunity I got to do Captain Pelion.
Yeah.
It was a lot of fun. I enjoy it very much, and there is more, right, that goes into it than you think.
Oh yeah.
It's not just mimicking a voice, right? Like you're
No.
trying to. It feels like you're trying to get into that persona as you're
Yeah,
doing it.
and I did kinda learn that early on, because, again, like, if in the movies, when you break it down, like, a lot of these characters have maybe 20 minutes, maybe a half hour of, like, lines that you can listen to, 'cause
Right.
the rest of it is, like, ships flying around and explosions,
Right.
So, when you're doing a 12-hour production, there's way more scenes than what are in the movie. So then if you don't beyond just, mimicking their, like, the sound of their voice or whatever, like,
Oh,
"Chewie, punch it," or whatever, like, you gotta get into their mindset. You got like, it's not just how they sound, but how do they think? Because
yeah.
if you're gonna portray new scenes and new scenarios that weren't portrayed in the films, then you gotta, like, figure out, well, what makes this guy tick, so that I would know how to react in that particular situation, so
Yeah. Yeah, that's so cool. I love it. As we kind of wind down for time here, I don't want to take up too much. I know you're a super busy man. You got a lot going on. So, what as for someone wanting to get into voice acting and kind of get down that road, what are some pieces of advice you'd give that person?
Well, what I usually tell people is, remember the acting part of voice acting. So, like, it's kind of what we were just talking about. It's like, it is a skill, and it is important to be able to do different voices and kind of sound like different people. And so that is important. But what's more important is the acting part, because, if you can, bring out the emotion in a scene, that's way more valuable to me as a director than it would be just that you can sound like someone or do an impersonation of someone. Because I want to play the emotions of the scene, and because otherwise it just becomes a sound after a while,
Right.
so like
Yeah.
so like just don't forget the acting part of voice acting. And so, like, whether that's taking acting classes, or getting involved in theater, or creating your own short films, and distributing them on your own. Just get as much acting experience as you can. And then, obviously play around with different, you know, vocalizations, and figuring out how to make different sounds and stuff. But I think the primary advice is just to become the best actors you can be. So
Yeah. That's good advice. I love it. What second to last question here.
technically, the last question is like 1A, 1B, but we'll get to that.
Hmm.
So in Star Wars, obviously in the Star Wars world right now, things are kind of tumultuous at times.
Hmm.
What kind of message would you give to the Star Wars community as a whole right now?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, I think, well, okay. I'm kind of an old guy now, so like I'm gonna be 50 in a couple weeks, and
Happy
like,
early birthday.
thank you. Um, I would say don't take for granted what we have right now, because like there was a time where all we had was 3 movies on VHS tapes, you know? So it's like we're kinda spoiled right now, and if everything we have is not your ultimate favorite, it doesn't necessarily mean it's not Star Wars or it's not or like Star Wars is lost. It's just we're so spoiled now, like we have video games and comics and books and live action TV shows and animated, so like if one thing is not your thing, that's okay. Like you're allowed to not like it, but
Yeah,
but um like we don't have to like pit shows against each other or pit different, like we were saying earlier, like really like Rebels, but that doesn't mean that I didn't like Clone Wars or that if I prefer Rebels over Clone Wars, that I'm bad, or if someone likes Andor more than they like Skeleton Crew or Acolyte, like that doesn't, let's just people there's different strokes for different folks and
for
different
sure.
things that people like, and so I think just, like what you like and just be grateful that we have all these choices, that we have all these
Right.
options, because there really was a time when you didn't have all these options,
Right.
and like, so it's like it's we're a little bit spoiled now, so like
We are.
I would just say, maybe be grateful, like because like
Yeah.
and if there's something that out currently that you're not liking, something else is gonna come along that you're probably gonna love, and just be patient and enjoy the things that you do enjoy,
Yeah.
so.
I'm glad you said that because that's something like my channel, like I want it to be about is that like when people come on, they're gonna know my opinion about my
Mhm.
Star Wars and how I feel about certain shows and stuff.
Sure.
But like we were even dealing with it last night. While I have a bunch of buddies that we do a live Andor stream, and I will be honest, this season of Andor has not been my favorite at
Okay,
all.
yeah,
But
yeah, yeah.
that's okay,
Yeah, yeah,
right? And
yeah.
you have people on the messenger, people who like to just sit and just kind of you know, keyboard warriors, I call them.
Yeah, yeah,
And it's like,
yeah.
"Hey, guys, like, that's okay, you know what? If you don't like it, that's totally cool, like, you don't have to watch it if you don't want, like."
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And just being able to actually have a conversation with people, like, "Hey, this is why I like the show," or "This is why I don't like." That's what I wanna foster is not like,
Yeah.
like, I wanna foster conversation, like,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah.
so I
No,
love that.
totally.
And then the last thing I was gonna ask is if you've been kind of sprinkled throughout, and I appreciate this. You've been doing some voices of the Heir to the Empire characters.
Uh-huh.
Could we get a Lando, what have we here? And then something from Thrawn, your choice.
Okay, yeah, yeah,
All
yeah.
right.
Well, what have we here? Now,
Yeah.
this podcast is something that belongs in the clouds.
Oh, dude. I love it. I love it.
um, this is Grand Admiral Thrawn, and if you are listening to this podcast, you have excellent taste in art.
Dude, that was so cool. Thank you so much,
Oh,
Mr.
yeah,
Robinson.
yeah.
I've been geeking out about this for a long while now, ever since we scheduled it. I got some buddies at church that are like massive Star Wars fans with me, and when I
Oh,
told them, they
cool.
were like, "Dude, are you kidding me?" I'm like, "I know." So,
That's
I
great.
really appreciate you being on here, taking the time out of your schedule. So, thank you.
Yeah. No problem.
Absolutely.
Thanks for having me. This was great.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. I appreciate it. Just real quick before we end, tell people where they can find you and follow your stuff.
Oh, sure. I am I have a complicated, social media stuff. I'm Captain Ehud underscore VO underscore Mark Thompson, I think. It's a long story, but I apologize. I'm
No,
Mark
you're good.
Thompson on Facebook, just Marc, and then on X, I'm Captain Ehud, and I think on Blue Sky, I might be Captain Ehud or Mark Thompson, but I apologize, it's not consistent, but I would have to pay to get verified, and I'm too cheap to do that. And I figure they keep kind of inventing new platforms that I'm gonna have to like learn how to use. And so,
Right. I love it. I love it. Well, thank you so much again for being on. We really appreciate it. We appreciate all the work you do to put into these voices for us in Star Wars.
thank you. I
So,
really appreciate it.
yes, absolutely. Have a good night and may the force be with you
And also
always.
with you.